take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Diksha Gera.
Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Tech Presents Empowering Business Growth in a Digital Economy. Whether you're here with us in person in San Francisco today or joining us through the live stream from elsewhere, we're thrilled to have you here this evening. Thank you for joining us. Today we'll hear from leaders across fintech and financial services on how businesses can stay nimble in a fast-changing landscape. We'll explore the forces currently driving the digital economy, including digital payments, capital access, and technologies that are reshaping the way money is moving. Our speakers will share practical strategies and tools that can help small and medium businesses innovate, improve efficiency, and deepen their customer relationships. We are really excited for the conversations today. Before we get started, just a couple of announcements. First of all, I'd really like to thank our sponsor, Mastercard, who we'll hear from in just a few minutes. Next, join the conversation. We want to hear from you as well. You can connect through the Wi-Fi using the details you can see on the screen behind me, and you can submit questions by scanning the QR code. We'd also love for you to be part of the discussion on social media, so bring out your phones, follow and share the highlights using hashtag Bloomberg Tech or hashtag BTech Digital Economy, and keep an eye for updates on Bloomberg Live, and don't forget to tag us. And now to kick us off, please join me in welcoming Ginger Siegel, North America Small and Medium Business Lead at Mastercard.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Welcome. We're just thrilled you're all here. I'm going to ask a quick question off script. How many of you care about small and medium businesses? Good answer. No, thank you. But no, that's really why we're all here together today. And, you know, it's funny. A lot of people think about Mastercard as a card company. Now, probably less of you that are in this room, but at dinner parties, you know, my daughter, Mom, can you help fix my credit card? That's really not what we are. Mastercard is actually a technology company. And what we do every day is power the global payment system. We serve banks, we serve fintechs, we serve merchants, consumers, processors. Couple numbers that'll kind of blow your mind. They've blown mine, and I've been at the company for 9 years. We process 150 billion transactions a year at 100 million locations. And in 2024 alone, we moved $9 trillion in money. So a lot of you are probably wondering, why do small businesses, why is that important to MasterCard? And I've been in the small business arena pretty much my whole career, and here's why. There's 34.8 million small businesses in the U.S. How many of you knew that they employ over 50% of the people in the United States? They really drive over 50% of the GDP, and they are growing at an astronomical rate with over 6 million that formed last year. And so we believe that since they are part of the communities, many of you probably saw during COVID that if they were closed, the community was closed. And today we're going to be talking a lot about digital and why digital is important to small and medium businesses. And that is why it is so critical that we partner with all of you. San Francisco, great place to be. We have a great office here. But many of you are in the fintech and the technology space, and you make it possible for small businesses to grow. A small business that accepts digital payments has 30% more sales, has significantly more revenue. But the other key thing to worry about is cyber. A lot of people don't understand, and we'll be talking about this a bit. But if you take a look at cyber attacks, over 50% of all cyber attacks happen to small business today. And that is why we've invested $7 billion in cyber technologies, and we've prevented about $30 billion in fraud. And if you think about it, the average cost of a ransomware attack is between $20,000 and $500,000 for a small business. So if you're a small business that does $250,000 in revenue, one cyber attack can wipe you out. So what gives me hope? There's a lot of things that small businesses have been up against in terms of the economy, in terms of cyber, in terms of the fact that they don't have a lot of resources. The top things they tell us is we need access to capital, we need to be kept safe and secure, and we need the ecosystem to enable us with digital technology. But we're very optimistic because small businesses are resilient. They came into business not to do the stuff that they don't like to do, like bills and invoices. They came in because of a passion. And really, that is why we're so optimistic, because we have the capability to put the wind at the back of our customers like you in order to enable your customers, the small businesses, to be better. And remember, this isn't just one of us. This is really all of us. And I think all of us can really share not just optimism, but really share the prosperity that we can put small businesses in a position to obtain so that they can grow themselves, their families, their employees' families, as well as their communities. And I want to personally thank Bloomberg for arranging this event. And man, we got a really cool audience. Like, you guys should talk to each other. There's some pretty cool people here. But we're super excited to be a part of it. You're going to have a really great evening and look forward to a lot of conversation. I want to thank you in advance for your attendance, but mostly I want to thank you about caring about small and medium business. So thank you so much.
So Ginger started with one question. I'm going to start with two. Are there any small, medium business owners in this room today? Please raise your hands. Yeah, so we have some real litmus tests in the room today. The second question I have is, this year, how many of you have felt a tinge of frustration standing in the queue at a bank branch or dealing with customer care support on the phone? Please, show of hands. Now, I just want you to imagine, what if that standing in the queue and dealing with the phone had to do with your survival or getting your next paycheck, and you weren't able to do that without going through that? That's the life of a small and medium business who's traditionally dealt with banks, traditional banks. And which is why we have this amazing panel today to discuss exactly how the world is moving in that direction in terms of making lives better and how credit and money flows are going to change. So let me start with you, Mary Kay. We had some fantastic conversations. When you look at SMBs today, what is the biggest gap that you see between what business owners need and what they're getting right now on financial services?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish we all serve small businesses up here, and I wish we could say the gap is closing, but sometimes I think with everything that's happening in the world, the gap is actually increasing. There's so much that they have to worry about. I think I'm going to pick two. I'm going to cheat a little and pick two. I think access to capital is definitely one of the things that I know Ginger mentioned, and it's not just capital; it's the right capital. It's at the right time, the right amount, when they need it, for the right purpose, and it's just not quite custom to them yet. And then I think the other thing is we all worry about fraud and losing money, and I think they really need support in being and having trust in the transactions with their customers and with their trading partners, their vendors, their suppliers. And I think cyber makes that much worse. Yeah. It makes the tools better, but it also makes the fraudsters better.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. We will definitely delve into access to capital. But David, let me bring this to you. What do you think is the biggest constraint to scaling capital availability? Is it operational complexity? Is it awareness? Like, what is the challenge? What's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, when we talk to our customers, I'm from QuickBooks and Intuit, and we have, of course, millions of small business customers. And the thing I hear time and time again, I'd actually distill down to confidence, and that is really the confidence of, can I get the access to capital that I need? And for them, it's hard because they, in many cases, don't have the confidence. They don't necessarily know what drives their ability to get capital. And I think traditionally the system has made it very hard to understand and then to go access that capital. They fill out a lot of paperwork. They've got to go do a lot. This is not traditionally a cohort that folks have wanted to serve really well. And so it's that confidence of, look, I can see that I might have some liquidity issues, but I don't really know that capital's there for me. And so I think for us, we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we make very clear up front what your borrowing power is at any given period of time to remove confidence as an impediment to go even take the first step to go try to access that capital.
Absolutely, right? And if you think about it, there are no credit scores. Like, as a consumer, we know what my credit score is. I know what is out there, but SMBs don't have that luxury. But Radinder, let me come back to ask you the same question. Like, what do you think from your conversations with your customers, what is the biggest impediment to scaling for SMBs?
Yeah, I'd say number one is, again, the access to capital always comes up. And part of that is that's also my role, and they know that's my role at the company. And so folks bring that up. But I think that's a fundamental challenge. And I think there's also a lack of awareness around what is available to them. And we collectively need to do a better job sort of telling that story and making sure it's front and center in the experience itself. And the other thing that small businesses talk a lot about is they need a partner who can scale with them, right? So someone who might be there with a $25,000 working capital loan today, but 10 years from now, we'll be able to do a $500,000 loan, right? And so I think that scaling piece is critical.
Absolutely. So just addressing the small, medium business segment particularly, right? The self-employed segment and the small business segment comprises about 50% plus of revenue for Intuit. It's the highest margin, most durable growth engine that the company has. You see the full accounting and tax picture across these customers, right? What is the most crucial insight that SMBs miss, like just from their own cash flow until it's too late?
Yeah, I think what they really miss is, and this is largely a function of the tools that they've had access to, they have a picture of yesterday. They don't have a picture of the future. So they know it's in their bank account, now. They know what left the bank yesterday. They know what invoice maybe was paid yesterday, but they don't know what's coming in. They don't know what bills are going to be due. They don't know what invoices are going to come in. And so, again, we spend a lot of time trying to help educate not just the picture as it is today or it was in the past, but what's about to happen to your business. And with that information, then they can go do things with that. They can make decisions. They can get access to capital if they need it. They can do things to accelerate, sort of their AR. They can delay AP. There's action they can take before it's too late and they get into a cash flow crunch like the one that you described.
Think about, right? It's really interesting. Like, when I think about my financial position, all I need to do is go look at my bank account and look at my credit card account, and that gives me a good sense. But when it comes to small businesses, there are like 15 incoming and outgoing payments that you can't see on a timeline. Just think about the complexity that kind of comes through along with and then money moves real time. Like, we don't wait for months or weeks to kind of, get a sense of the way financial situation kind of evolves, right? Mary, Bill sits at the center of AP/AR view for SMBs. Where are they losing the most time right now, or the most time or the most money in workflows? Like, where do you think is the biggest delta?
Well, it's a great question, and it depends on every SMB too. I think one of the things that when we get into these rooms and we talk about SMBs, and I'm glad to see some SMBs actually here, we talk about them like a group.
Yeah.
But there are some SMBs that we have as customers that are in manufacturing, others who are in services, professional services, lawyers, some accountants actually are working with us. And so their cash flow needs from AP to AR are very different. So it really depends. We've tried to listen and personalize to the needs of our actual customers and to be that support for them looking at what is coming in and what is going out. And they have so many levers, almost in some cases, you talked about too much choice or not awareness. They can extend their terms to get a bit more cash flow. And I've always said, I've worked around this business for a long time. The joke is that cash is king, but I always said cash flow is king, because you can have cash at the wrong time and it's not helping the small business's business. So being able to know when to trip which switch in their AP and AR systems, and that's the intelligence that we try to bring to them every day when they're using our systems, because they sometimes aren't going to know.
So I will let everyone take this back. Cash is not king, cash flow is king. So I think that's a good tagline to kind of take to as a marketing or whatever for SMBs to understand, right? Ratinder, what is the most misunderstood factor about SMB creditworthiness in an environment, what David pointed out, where money is moving real time? Like, where do you think is the gap there?
I honestly think that from a credit risk standpoint, the biggest thing is experience, right? And friction. So you have to make the credit really accessible, like the application accessible, the product accessible, the offer accessible. If you make it hard to find, who's going to end up applying, right? The one who's trying really hard to look seeking credit, basically. And then if you've got a clunky experience or you're introducing a lot of friction, right, your best credit is going to walk away, right, and go somewhere else. And so I think that's the biggest misunderstanding. Like, if you can drive a better experience, you will drive better credit quality at that top of funnel and conversion. And I'd say that's the number. Like, we have all the models in the world, strategies in the world, data, but if your experience stinks, like, you're done.
I'll take a point of that and elaborate it. So I've covered banks for a bulk of my career out of Asia. And there are some companies who've made a living, like top-notch return drivers is the SMB business. But if you talk to bulk of the banks, that is the one business they really struggle to get right. And you can identify, like, if you pick a country, you can tell, okay, UOB in Singapore, Kasikorn Bank in Thailand. Like, and the gist of it is exactly what you both summarized right now. One is SMB is not one unit. They come in like a varied shape and size, look and feel, like sectors different, size different, requirements are different. But also to what you pointed out, right, Ratinder, that their needs are very complex. And the other thing is on the failure rate and all the impact of creditworthiness awareness between financials, how they assess that. That's the biggest gap that banks really struggle to kind of put a number to or like service them as such, right? And that's the DNA of banks. So how do we get to address that gap now? So David, Intuit is using a lot of proprietary data that you have on these companies to automate a lot of their financial workflows. Tell us more about how you're using predictive models to kind of make them aware of what their needs are before they actually can see it.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, again, a big part of our focus is on predicting what's about to happen, not what has happened. And so one of the places that we focus a lot of our attention is on kind of outstanding AR. So invoices that are out there in the world, and trying to help our customers predict, hey, when are you likely to get paid? And we can do that, of course, because if I send an invoice to you, we've probably seen a bunch of other people send invoices to you, and so we can predict what your payment patterns look like. And so we would feed data like that back to the customer and say, hey, look, this is our prediction. But again, the prediction is not enough. We want to make sure it's clear, okay, what do I go do with this thing? And so then we want to be thoughtful about, is the point that, hey, this is going to take a while, and we perceive that you're going to have some sort of acute gap, and so you should go access capital. And by the way, not just go access capital, but here's very specifically what we think you could go do to get capital now. Or are there other kinds of things that you could do in order to avoid a cash flow issue? So that's what we're doing when we're trying to predict the future AR, AP, really across the board for these businesses. But the other place that we're really trying to bring our data to bear, one of the things that we recognize in small businesses is that they're waiting to really reconcile, do a lot of the sort of cost side of their books because it's time consuming, it's administrative. And so they'll wait like 30 to 60 days to really bring in all the cost information for their business. And what it means is that they're always missing a real-time view of their profitability. And so imagine you're a general contractor. You've got a lot of projects. You've got a lot of incoming bills. You haven't processed them yet. You don't know which bill is for which project and everything else. And so then 60 days later, you're like, oh, my gosh, the Han Residence project is not a profitable project, right? Whereas maybe yours is probably. Yeah, so it's those kind of insights that we're really trying to bring much earlier in the process. So again, a business owner can actually make a decision, not just be informed, sort of after the fact when it's too late to take action.
That is such a big unlock. Like, just thinking about it is making me feel like my mental bandwidth just got released, right? Like, when did you launch this feature?
This is an ongoing area that we're focused on.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Mary Kay, you also have been working in the same arena, right? Like with the whole automation of AP/AR. When you look at when clients adopt that, what is the biggest unlock when AP/AR is fully automated? Is it around cash flow accuracy? Is it around faster collections, strategic decision making? Like, what are your conversations like?
Yeah, it is such a great focus area for us because some of our customers, and I totally agree with David, knowing what is coming in and being able to predict that, and I think all of us are working on solutions for that. Sometimes you're on the other side of the transactions and you're paying and you're saying, hey, I have to preserve some of my cash. So I'm going to be a bit of a slow payer to that contractor, and really knowing that. But I think the other one that we sometimes forget about, and I think it reflects on what David was saying about the waiting too long, like the matching and the reconciliation. I know, like, if you're a master cabinet maker or if you're a lawyer, I'm guessing you didn't get up in the morning and say, you know what, I'd really like to do some bank reconciliation. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm gonna make that happen. And I think
also labor savings, right?
And it's labor savings, so they don't have to do it, or somebody that they hire doesn't have to do it, which means they can put them to work for the rest of their business. But more and more, we're also seeing that labor availability is difficult for small businesses. And so hiring, even finding someone to hire to shorten that cycle is difficult. So we like to stand in for them.
Thanks for confirming that. I'm talking about that in my presentation later, so amazing. Okay. Rutinder, you see credit risk globally, PayPal's presence. What are the early signals you are seeing in SMB's health in this current macroeconomic situation? Any thoughts that you'd like to kind of share with us on that?
Yeah, from a pure data perspective, like we have a pretty comprehensive, what we call a recession readiness framework that's always on, and we're monitoring internal indicators, things that we think are leading indicators, both on the SMB and consumer side. One benefit PayPal has is like we're the largest two-sided network, so we can see kind of both sides of the house. And what I'd say is that the data is all really encouraging in terms of spend levels, delinquencies, losses. We're still at rough, 2-year lows when it comes to delinquency and losses on the credit side of the house. So no real concern there. However, like when we talk to SMBs, right, there's a lot of uncertainty. Right? There's a lot of uncertainty in costs and labor, and I think they're hedging a little bit because they're concerned what 2026 might bring, but as of this moment in time, no real concerns on the true health.
I'm 100% with you. And the funny thing is, 5 years ago, Asia, the exact same conversations, SMEs get squeezed on both ends. They can't dictate price, and they're cost takers. Yep. And in that scenario, when margins are wafer thin, you see an economic cycle. So that is exactly probably why it's very challenging to serve them as well. Let's think about from a network and partnership strategy. And I really liked what you said earlier, David, around the network effect of what you can see and how that kind of impacts your offering, in the sense that you have a lot broader visibility and intelligence around that. So Intuit spans across accounting, payments, payroll, lending. All of these verticals have very strong incumbents, right? How much of a challenge is interoperability between those systems right now, and where do you foresee challenges like going forward on that?
Yeah, I mean, as we try to serve our customers, there's sort of two principles I think that are in mind for us. So, so the first is you mentioned a number of things that we build, and the reason we've chosen to build all those things natively is that we think that they work better together. We think that, especially in an AI world, when you have separate systems and data silos, a lot of the gains that we're going to get from AI, I think, get more difficult. And so, so I think our first principle is we've taken a very explicit strategy to sort of build natively. That said, we do have some really important partners out there. And as we think about our customers, we really try to figure out where are they actually running their business. And a lot of our customers actually run their business on QuickBooks. They do all the things that you just described. But some don't. And if you take, let's think about like an Amazon seller, for instance. And an Amazon seller is spending a lot of time in the Amazon Seller Central. And so in that particular case, we've partnered with Amazon to embed a lot of the tools that we have today, things like our capital product, things like our cash flow insights, directly into that surface, because we know in that case that is the gravity. That is where those customers are spending their time. So we ultimately are trying to solve the customer problem in the pane of glass where they're operating their business. In many cases, that's us. But in cases where it's not, we want to make sure that we're there. We want to make sure it's easy. We want to make sure that we're integrated. Absolutely.
And Mary Kate, where do partnerships with card networks like Mastercard, Visa create differentiated value? Is it like acceptance, security, data? Like where do you see those sort of partnerships play a role?
Yeah, I think as we were talking about, and everybody's mentioned it, having more data as a provider to small businesses is an advantage. So having both sides of the network, or having their software-related data as well as their payments-related data, is really important. And it becomes really important to then know what to do with it. So when I think about those types of partnerships, in addition to the ones that David mentioned, we think about, we are also an issuer of credit on cards. We are also an acceptor of cards and a facilitator of those transactions. So if we're going to serve them well, we have to ensure that we're working with the rest of the financial services ecosystem, including the payment networks, to make sure that we are months and years ahead of the needs of our customers, so that we can get it into our systems, so we can make it seamless for them, so it's very accessible, and it just works.
Yeah.
Instead of making sure that they understand what the new fraud release from all of the great work that we do across the ecosystem.
So we had to talk a lot about commercial cards, and what is kind of the reason why there's relatively slower transition, if I may say, to especially with SMBs, right? And we talked about financial awareness and all of that, but I think we need to address the elephant in the room first. We talked about access to credit, and maybe I should start with you, Rathinder. Funding SMBs has always been so tricky, right? And I know, like, I listed down like 5 reasons, but smaller loans, higher rates, higher defaults. Banks don't always get it right. How far can embedded credit go without pushing the lever too much on risk? I think that's the one question that I get asked the most, that when you have lending outside of the banking purview, people like to kind of bring that risk concern.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to having the right risk appetite framework, right? You have to step back and say, all right, what are we trying to drive here? We're trying to drive customer lifetime value, right? And so you've got to build guardrails around that framework. And so what that means is you might do a loan where you have zero margin, but that loan will drive other value within your ecosystem. You're going to say yes to that, right? And so I think for us it's a little bit easier because we have such a deep relationship with that SMB. There's so many different ancillary services, and we're trying to help them grow. So we're not a bank. We're not a sole lender, right? That isn't we'll never be the biggest lender in the world, right? That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to help SMBs, and that's the mission we're on. And so if you have the lifetime value framework, then it actually makes it pretty easy to say, what are we comfortable doing and not doing? And then with frankly, the availability of data today, you talk about open banking and how much less friction there is for an SMB now to get a loan and to get a pre-approved offer, I think we're in a much better place than we were, say, 2 or 3 years ago in terms of access to credit.
Point taken on de-risking with data, but let's talk about the current environment now, right? Like the AI adoption case, and I'd get beaten up if I don't discuss that topic on stage today. So let me start with you, David. Where do you think AI will have the biggest uplift for Intuit?
Yeah, I mean, look, the place we're already seeing it is, Ginger alluded to this actually in her opening comments. It's just especially for small business, the burden of the administrative work, everything from AR to AP to payroll, all the things. Like this is, I think we talk about it a lot, but like when you one-on-one with customers, you really realize how much of a time sink it is. And AI, I mean, we're seeing it already. I mean, it really has the capacity to really take a lot of this workload off. And so I don't even think it's a tomorrow thing. I think it's a today thing where we're really seeing the benefit. And it's just going to accelerate. And so I think as I think about, you talked about sort of confidence in general of the SMB cohort. Yes, there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, but at the same time, I hope that they see, and certainly the customers we talk to see, that they're going to be huge beneficiaries of this. They're recognizing that before, much larger firms had access to a lot of automation. Much larger firms had access to all these experts. Now they've got that themselves, or they're about to have that themselves. And so I think the time back so that they can go focus on growing their business, I think we all still underestimate how transformative AI is going to be for small business in particular. For
sure. I understand your bets on this. So I followed 2021 is when you came out and said that's one of our top priorities to put in AI in workflows for our clients. But short on time, so Radinder, where is the biggest lift for AI for PayPal?
Today, it is a lot of productivity, internal productivity, workflow, use cases, time to a new model, all of that. It's been incredible. I think in the collection space, we just released a voice agent, right? And consumers feel a lot more comfortable talking to a digital agent than they do a human being, which is super interesting. We could spend an hour on that. And then what I'd say, though, is like what's going to be game-changing is, you think about our ecosystem with 400 plus million consumers, 25, 30 million merchants. Like, how can AI be that Match.com to sort of bring consumers to our SMBs? I think that's where you're going to see the most value.
Yeah, and I think I'd be remiss not to mention your push on agentic commerce overall, right? Yeah. Democratizing AI for SMBs. Time for the nerd in the room to answer. What is the most exciting development that you're looking forward to?
Well, I need that hour that we were just talking about because I get very excited. But not to repeat, and we have assistants and agents that are helping customers with everyday work, giving them time back, and we are protecting workflows. But one thing that I think I'll mention on top of that is AI is a tool for them. It's a tool for us to serve them, but it's also a tool for fraudsters and for people who want to maybe do some harm to them. And so we have some, we call it the AI paradox. There's all of this great stuff from AI, but then it also makes the bar higher for us to actually help them. I think 54% of our customers said that they use advanced AI capabilities to help fight fraud and manage credit risk and manage the risk of their business. But they also worry that 46% of them also worry that those are tools that the other side is using. So I think it's finding the good and using the good, but also helping them protect from the bad.
Yeah. We're in the right room for that conversation. I mean, Mastercard acquired Recorded Future. That's like they're doubling down on that part of it as well. Hope that was helpful for everyone in the room. And the three things that I'd highlight, just looking at these people that I'm going to carry with me, cash flow is king, not cash. Cash flow is king. Secondly, you can de-risk by using data. And thirdly, AI is the way to go. That's the only toolkit that you need right now for survival. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being on the panel today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Rhett.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. So really excited to have Rhett Roberts here, who's the CEO of LoanPro, and some really great conversation I think will be upcoming. We've heard a lot of talk about access to capital, and I think we probably all know that there's a couple different ways for small businesses to get access to capital. One is get their own money in quicker. The second is seeking capital from the outside. So, Rhett, from your perspective, when you think about small businesses who are seeking capital, what are some of the most pressing challenges that you hear about, particularly, and I think this was brought up a lot in the previous conversation, speed, flexibility, digital convenience, and how do these challenges kind of shape how they can get capital in this fast-changing environment?
Yeah, I think the last panel's conversation highlights the points really well. There's really a couple of pieces, right? So there's going to be, a small business is kind of hard to underwrite because it's uniquely shaped in smaller tranches. And so you have to have a bespoke underwriting model, and that is dependent upon the data that's relevant that doesn't get contaminated from another silo, right? So the organization of access to the data components. The second is going to be this concept of how do you deliver. David mentioned this concept of delivering single pane of glass in the place that's convenient for them. Somebody, a small business, pick whatever it is, they're busy doing their business. They're wearing lots of hats doing that thing, and they don't have time during banking hours to go seek out a loan and fill out applications. And by the way, that's probably not their expertise either. So can you deliver that in a unified experience for them in that pane of glass? We see a lot of efforts happening that way. Many in the room are doing efforts there. And the third piece, and where my business comes involved, designing your financial products in a way that meets your customers' needs. And so not only do you need to have your underwriting model not be a one-size-fits-all, you need to have the actual financial product they got match what they need. So we see a few of those happening in the ecosystem of maybe cash flow underwriting resulting in somewhat of something other than a vanilla amortized payment schedule, right? You can have a lumpy one that matches some schedules, but you also can have other kinds of products. So I think getting more, the concept is the future finance is highly personalized, and you need to have your inputs be aware of that as well.
No, I think it's a really important point, and something that you said I think is critical is embedding the customer experience, because they don't have the time, very often the knowledge, how to do that. So I think David spoke a lot about small businesses that are using QuickBooks for so many things, and they've got a lot of those capabilities. But as we think about partnership, and we think about the concept of, I like to call it frenemies, fintechs, banks, organizations that are really forced to partner because they may not be able to build or sometimes buy the technology that they need. So LoanPro is really known for helping lenders modernize quickly. Sometimes, inherently banks might be slower than fintech, sometimes they might be faster, but when they are slower, you really work with so many financial services companies like Mastercard, different issuers. How are you leveraging your technology and data to actually use these partnerships to transform the way small businesses operate?
Yeah, that's great. A great question. So launching new products is hard, and it takes a long time, and people do a lot of research to figure out what should it be, and by the time they actually print the thing, they probably need to iterate on it again. And so shortening feedback cycles is super, super key, and there's a few efforts to do that. One of the things we see in our business, right, we're supporting lenders of all shapes and sizes, doing all credit kinds of products, collateral-based and not, lines of credit, cards, as well as installment loans. We see this concept of connecting an ecosystem. And so there's a lot of value add that's done there, like in our partnership with Mastercard. There's this concept where if you approach this from you're going to do it all, you'll probably run out of business before you actually print a successful product. And so if you can take the learnings from the generations of frenemies or yourself before you, and implement those. And some of that's in the technology stack. So if you go and interview and talk to a lot of folks about the financial products that they have, I'd say more than 50% of the function of their financial products isn't on purpose. It was just a constraint of how it worked. And you need to ask them, should it work that way? Does it actually solve the problem? Is there a regulatory reason why it needs to do that? And generally the answer is, I don't really know. That's just like how it worked, and we just kind of did that. So we spent a lot of time unpacking those pieces and see, okay, what are the Lego building blocks that are required to make that happen? And from that, you get the learnings of what is needed. And so we engage with lots of customers as they launch products to actually meet the end needs. So we see a much higher performance of the portfolios that are ran on Loan Pro because you have real-time visibility of the data that's happening on the accounts. But you also have products that are a little bit more bespoke. And when you meet the need, one example, we do both consumer and small business. But small business, if you give somebody a loan that's like a straight line amortized loan, when you see the cash flow underwriting, they have really lumpy schedules of when the flow of funds come in. Think of way back when how a farmer's loan worked, right? They understood this back then. They had seasonality to it. But if you just gave them a cookie cutter loan and then you're surprised when they have difficulty of performance, yeah, well, you kind of knew that going in. So it's actually, we're seeing a lot of effort to remove the cookie cutter and instead have an array of different products and matching the customers for those instead of the other way around.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's that customization, and quite frankly, a lot of people that I talk to in all different of our verticals are actually looking at things from that perspective, from an industry lens. So look, if nothing else, we've talked a lot about access to capital, and it's often cited as one of the biggest barriers to growth. Couple stats, I love stats. The average small business only has 27 days of cash on hand. Wow. Roughly 80% of small businesses that go out of business do so because of lack of access to capital. We know that timely and reliable funding is so important, and some of the stats that I talked about in the beginning, we are impacting employment. If they are employing almost 50% of the people in the U.S., if they don't have this funding to really seize opportunities and maintain resilience, it can really cause a significant ripple effect. So the opposite way, as you look at it from the things that you're doing to help small businesses, what ripple effect does improved access to capital have on things like job creation, innovation, how local economies can survive?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I love small business. The first thing that comes into mind is even beyond the stats, people who have the courage to go ahead and start a business. This is their passion. This is their desire. So they're wearing so many hats. And as Dave said earlier, from Intuit, this idea that they're behind on entering their invoices because they're so busy doing the thing that they do. And so having real-time visibility. So a piece of that is the access to capital. And as they have access to capital, can they increase the velocity and predictability of the flywheel that they're doing? And so if you think of small business, it's not just their job. It's often like integrated with everything within their life. There's tons of businesses that are maybe a married couple that's doing that, and they're spending like all their waking hours, and it's part of their family. So if a small business folds, it has a ripple impact beyond just the economic numbers of that business itself. And that's part of the reason we love supporting small business so much, and everybody in the room sees the impact that they're making that way. When we see the successful products, we see very positive correlation that's happening when you design a financial product that does those three things: uses unique data for underwriting, delivers it embedded, a huge time save, but you can also, it's like popcorn at the movie theater, right? It's right there, right temperature, right everything for them, as well as the third piece, design the product to be successful for them. We see much higher retake rates. We see lower cost of capital aggregated. We see folks build up their financial skills and abilities, where maybe they're starting with one of the challenges of small business is how do you determine the amount of money to give them based off of the underwriting model of the data. And so they usually start with slightly smaller amounts that are issued, and then they like earn into a bigger number. We see the velocity of the change of their credit limit increase is much faster on the performance side as the products are designed the right way for them. So it's this virtuous cycle that can occur that if the financial product is designed in a bespoke solution that is actually helping like cure some of the problems at the beginning of it's difficult to underwrite them because you can actually create the data set used to train the model.
And I love this concept of a flywheel. So I think in closing, there's one other thing I'd want to add. The thing that sometimes people forget is every small business is also a consumer. Yeah. And so when you do not help a small business, when a small business is impacted, it is impacting their consumer life as well. And anywhere between 14 and 25% of consumers actually own their own business. And we do propensity modeling where we see this. So the importance of small business to the entire ecosystem, including their life as a consumer, is another really important aspect. So thank you for everything you do to help them. And thanks, everyone, for attending. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. We are going to entertain you with some scary stories from the world of cyber. We'll hopefully fill you with some optimism about the solutions that you can put in place. I'm so excited to have Andy Piazza with me, Senior Director of Threat Intelligence, Palo Alto Network's Unit 42. And we were just joking in the green room about how Andy has the coolest job. And just to explain to everyone, Unit 42 has the most incredible insight into the scary things that are happening on the internet through instant response. So when you're helping out companies who've been targeted in a cyber attack, but also through telemetry through your products. Can you talk a little bit about the insights that you have and things that you've been seeing recently that have been targeting the financial sector and fintech?
Yeah, absolutely. So as she said, I got one of the coolest jobs. I get to hunt bad guys on the internet. It is a lot of fun, but it usually means I'm the doom and gloom person because I'm always seeing the bad stuff. So what does that look like? We have, if you're a customer of ours and you have your telemetry turned on to come into Palo, my folks can see it. Plus, we support all of our incident response engagements. We've been really, really active going after social engineering groups. So we call them Muddled Libra. You might hear Scattered Spider, or Lapsus, or Hunter, Shiny Hunters. They got like 19 different names. We like to keep it confusing. I'm pretty sure my guys like to name them funny things, so I have to say them out loud in front of you as well. So we've been looking at a lot of the social engineering folks. They're hitting a lot of different industries. I don't want to say it's specifically targeted to financial, but they've definitely moved in that space as well. But really, I think, if I'm thinking fintech, I'm really, and especially the crypto or anything that's moving money, I'm thinking North Korea. There's a group called Trader. We track them as Slow Pisces. They're a North Korean group that has been going hard after the financial industry for a very long time. And there's some interesting overlaps, I think, with the social engineering groups. What we're seeing, not to say we solve cyber from a technology perspective, but we're seeing a lot more leaning on social engineering and leaning on phishing but also the phone phishing, right? Phishing with a V, going after IT workers and downstream companies or supply chain companies. It's a little weird for me to call it a supply chain, but more like your vendors, your IT, your help desk, those types of things. We were talking before. There was one case I'm familiar with where social engineers were able to call help desk and get password reset, but also a multi-factor authentication reset and a new phone added to the network all in one call. And it just makes me think, like, whoa, like you could spend $1 billion on technology, but if we don't fix that human process, like that's a huge exposure. So really want to talk there about, what are we seeing? North Korea side, very similar. So there's 3 big campaigns we track. So there's wage moles, the IT workers being embedded in companies, some of you might be familiar with. That one's really interesting. They're literally getting people hired into legitimate IT jobs. They're using fake personas or identities they've bought online to actually work as developers, software developers, and IT staff within companies. The other one we call contagious interview is where they're targeting IT workers with fake LinkedIn jobs. We work regularly with Microsoft and LinkedIn team to get those accounts taken down. But with contagious interview, it's very similar to how they're targeting the crypto industry with the trader activity, is they're using job recruiter personas out on LinkedIn looking for people in IT and fintech, looking for jobs. And it's really common with coders and IT folks. As part of the interview process, you do a coding challenge, and that coding challenge has a backdoor in it and gets them infected. I know all the leaders in the room are probably thinking, well, that's not a big deal. No one's doing a job interview on their corporate device, right? Yeah, we're still seeing that activity all of the time. We are calling CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, regularly, saying, hey, man or ma'am, I got some bad news for you. We're seeing some North Korean activity. And I think one of the things that's important is all three of these campaigns, the Trader is more the actor name, but it's really appropriate for the campaign as well, going after fintech and crypto, contagious interview and wageable. These have all been out for 2 to 3, 4 years. With DOJ indictments, international sanctions, all kinds of things happening, and it's still happening every day. I'm literally, doing customer notifications this week for some of that activity. So
they're not one-off, rare occasions. That's on a huge scale.
The problem is now to hit our news cycle, right? It's got to be a big thing, and once it's already out, it's already been a big thing. So unless it's what we saw, I think it was in February with I'm going to butcher the company's name, BitByte, I believe it was. That was a record, 1 point something billion that was stolen. That's going to hit the news because of the amount. What's even more amazing to me in that was they were able to make 500 million or 300 million disappear in like 5 days. I'm not going to sound smart to you who know fintech and moving money faster than I do, but it seems really impressive to make like a couple 100 million disappear in just a handful of days. If that's not impressive to you, tell me I'm in the wrong job. But yeah, so North Korea is really, really involved in the money laundering side too, not just the cyber breach, but how do they make that crypto disappear? How do they cash it out? If you really love stories, listen to the Lazarus Heist on, it's a podcast, but they turned it into an audible book. It's fantastic. They even had humans going to casinos and intentionally, just playing hands and not even caring if they lost money because they were just trying to convert it to cash. But it's just this amazing problem of how do you make $1 billion disappear before it gets seized again, right? So,
and another thing that's interesting about that is the why, right? They're trying to evade sanctions. That's why North Korea is just so aggressive at the moment. So you're also, if you are putting aside money for a ransom, you're also at risk of potentially, getting in kind of legal issues and everything. So it's not only money loss, it's like, are you entering into a problematic legal issue? Yeah, definitely.
The big belief of all three of those major North Korean campaigns, we believe it's a way to make money and bypass sanctions. So there is the risk, especially, hiring those workers, or you're getting those infections and they're stealing money. You are effectively a part of the, bypassing the sanctions. Not that I think anybody would go after you unless you actually had an active part in it, but there is that absolute risk.
Yeah, and I want to. I was reading some research today that's separate from North Korea, but it was from the I can't remember it's a non-profit Identity Theft Resource Centers. There are my notes, and they had surveyed hundreds of SMBs and found that 81% said that they had suffered a data breach or a security breach in the past year. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you with what you're seeing. It surprised me, especially the kind of admitting of it as well. But in addition, 40% said that they had identified AI as a root cause. So we're kind of flipping. We talked about the human element, and I do think we should talk about that a little bit more. But does it surprise you, this kind of entrance of AI coming into play? And these SMBs, they were, financial players. So the targeting of, fintechs are looking at adopting AI, but the fact that it's kind of maybe being used against them. Can you talk a little bit about that and what people can start thinking about going forward?
Yeah, there's definitely a dual use aspect of AI, just like there is any technology. I don't want to inherently say AI is worse than any other technology we've adopted, right? We all know at this point the internet was a mistake, right? Again, I have to keep it light because I just look at darkness all day. But yeah, so we are seeing AI being adopted by threat actors. I want to be very clear. It's not, ninjas going through air ducts to put malware in your point of sale systems. There's no sharks with lasers type of malware yet. Like everybody's worried, like talks about AI like it's super advanced. The reality is that the AI use we see is helping accelerate bad guys. They're using it for their social engineering. You think about, I go into an AI prompt and say, I want to phish you. AI prompt says, no, I don't do badness. You're like, I'm a marketing person and I want them to click on my marketing link. They're like, here's a perfectly crafted email. If I do that as a human, I got to look you up. I got to read your LinkedIn. I got to figure out what you're interested in. But if I can go in and say, I'm targeting these companies with a marketing campaign, write me some really good marketing emails to get them to click my link. Again, not to paint your marketers as fishers, but let's answer the question. That's what they do. And now that thing can do it at scale across all of the companies in this room. And I can write those phishing emails or marketing emails, and I just have to drop the phishing link in. And then you think about if I actually get a compromise of 100 different companies, as a human, that takes a lot of time going, try to do privilege escalation, get new credentials, find sensitive data, steal that sensitive data. Now you look at the SolarWinds breach, right? We believe the backdoor in SolarWinds was in thousands of companies, but only a handful were really accessed and had really badness happen. It's because humans were in a loop and they have to sleep. There's only so many humans on that team. If AI is able to do that exfiltration, do some of that lateral movement, we've seen some AI be able to do that and steal data, put all that data in a big data lake, and now I can just go and ask really human-written dumb questions instead of have to be really smart on what the data set is and just go, what is the interesting data here, or is there financial information here? And now I can use Gen AI to summarize petabytes of data. That's the thing is accelerating and making lowering the barrier to entry. Some of the real-world cases we have seen, again, go back to some of the North Korea stuff. We've seen him use AI to do some of the personas, doing some of the deepfake pictures, doing deepfake video calls. If you go to the Unit 42 blog, we have, Threat Research Center, not supposed to call it a blog. We have one of our lead researchers, actually in DPRK research too, played around with some of the deepfakes and did some of the videos. And it's pretty convincing. Technology is rough. If you move your head too fast, the video kind of shears, but could be on a poor Zoom connection, and you can use that excuse too. And
deepfakes have been effective in some cases. It's been reported, despite the kind of shaky.
Yeah, it's unfortunately worked. It's worked a lot. I mean, I think we all are used to, hey, I'm mobile. I can't get on the video right now, right? We know a number of folks that take calls from everywhere, like me. I take them from the airport all the time. So shaky video or poor quality is not too big of a surprise in a mobile age. So.
And it all adds to the kind of human social engineering element, which is these people are so well versed in getting people under pressure, putting you on the spot. You're thinking, right, I need to make this decision now very quickly, and that's where it all comes in. It's kind of the old tricks being used over and over again.
Yeah, I wish, if I could tell anybody one thing and push this out in your security awareness with leadership stamps of approval, is that no one will ever get in trouble for slowing down in a company is like the number one thing that leaders need to tell their people, because a sense of urgency is the number one thing that there's a scam at foot, right? Like, I used to be a security officer for a very small company, a government contractor, and we would see all of the time, as soon as somebody updated their LinkedIn status, hey, this is Trong, the CEO, I need some gift cards for this customer, I'm in a meeting. Like, so part of our onboarding was like, no, Trong will not text you for gift cards. Like, everybody knows that scam, but it's still happening. It's clearly successful if it's still happening. But like putting out that, hey, slow down. When you see anything that makes you want to speed up, you should make it slow down and encourage your employees, and especially if you're using third-party help desks, those types of things, encouraging them to slow down and ask those questions. How do you escalate a password reset over the phone? You're going to validate by their supervisor's name. That's on LinkedIn. Information they would have put on Facebook. Those types of things. Think about how you harden those processes. I see some companies, if you want to do a password reset and you can't be on the device itself, then the password goes to that person's supervisor, because that supervisor is going to know, hopefully, if they're talking to their real human or not. So think about those where you kind of have like a two-person integrity in the reset process. Surely if someone calls and says, I need a password reset, multi-factor, and a device added to the network, that should scare your help desk, and they should be calling the Security Operations Center immediately. But unfortunately, we see that stuff all of the time.
Mm-hmm. So slow down and don't break things. is the motto.
I know, it's opposite of San Francisco
the San Francisco motto. A question from the audience. What is one cyber threat to small businesses that leaders often don't anticipate?
Business email compromise. So business email compromise sounds like phishing, but really business email compromise is this idea that I pop your email or somebody that you email regularly. So I compromise it. Sorry, I use my big words like pop it. Compromise your email, and I see that, me and her have emailed back and forth. We've established, what questions we're going to talk about. And it's like, oh, hey, here's an updated list. And I give her an attachment. Now she has that trust. She opens it and she infects herself because my email was actually compromised. Or oftentimes what we're seeing with business email compromise is the invoice themes and, changing the routing number and saying, getting into this email chain, seeing that I'm going to invoice her for something and changing where that money routes to. One of my favorite stories ever on this, too. I heard it years ago. I wish I could give the person credit. Cannot remember who it was, but they said that it was a couple $1 million, but they, two big businesses do it regularly, and the person who got the email typed in the new invoice information, was like getting ready to hit submit to reroute the money to a different invoice number or a routing number, and picked up the phone to call her friend, not because she thought it was suspicious, but it didn't have enough emojis and exclamation marks, and she wanted to make sure her friend was okay and wasn't having a bad day. Like, I can't teach that in security awareness, right? I can't write that in a rule in a security stack so the security alert goes, not enough emojis from Andy's email. So, just that human aspect of slowing down and going, oh, hey, she sounds off today. Her email sounds off, right? Picking up the phone and validating is a huge thing.
And it doesn't sound like the sexiest thing, business email compromise. And, we like everyone's talking about AI, but really that is the big thing. I hear about it, journalistically, and we always get figures through from companies, and it really is such a massive thing that is hitting people, and people really need to be sharper on it.
Well, that's the hard thing when I do a lot of threat landscape briefings, right? Threat intel briefs. Like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell your company all of the bad things we're going to see. And normally, if you do get a threat intel brief, it's the coolest cases, but that means they're usually the worst, the most complicated, and ninjas going through the HVAC, that type of thing. And then I'm going to get to my recommendation slide. And it's like, if you had all the time in the world and $1 billion, here's all the recommendations. I would much rather tell you about the stuff that's really in the middle, like hardening identity. When we as IT staff and security staff, if we have multiple credentials, different username and password for the different environments that we need to work in, that doesn't mess with your users. That only bothers your IT staff. But honestly, who doesn't have already 20 usernames they probably use in a day? But if you say, okay, if Andy wants to log in on his laptop, he's got a username and password. If he wants to log in on a server, actually maintain that server, different username and password. That now is effectively free, or a couple of pennies if you're using cloud accounts, but it's really, really good visibility now of what we call lateral movement. If my regular user account tries to hit that server and do something, that stands out. There are free and cheap and easy things that we can do to get that visibility, and I will argue, especially because I'm a threat hunter and I need that visibility, visibility is one of the #1 things you can do to help your security operations center. The more complex we get with third-party systems, software as a service, and not getting that visibility to your security staff, especially as you outsource a lot of your processing, like your help desk and stuff, just makes it so much harder for the good guys to do the job.
And then in terms of solutions, fintechs are, and SMBs kind of nimbler, perhaps don't have the huge kind of cybersecurity teams that larger financial enterprises might have. What can people do to protect themselves if they're looking at their supply chain, their service providers, looking at their staff? What would you suggest are the main things to sharpen up their cybersecurity?
Well, just like most startups probably started with a whiteboard, I would go to a whiteboard and just say, what's our HR onboarding process look like? Or onboarding a vendor. Are we hardening those? What does that hardening mean, right? Do we require a supervisor to be in the loop if a password is reset? The small little things that we can do to just slow down the threat actors. We're seeing it with AI, we're seeing it with social engineering, just speeding up. We did a test last year with our penetration testing teams, or our red teams, right, our bad guys that break into systems. They try to use AI across the kill chain, and they were able to do from initial access to exfiltrating data, and it was 50 minutes or 25 minutes, something ridiculous, under an hour. Most people don't realize this, but your security operations center wouldn't even get an alert from most security systems in that 1 hour loop, and they were already done with their job, right? So, how do we slow things down? How do we counter social engineering? How do we counter the deep fakes? It's easy to go and say there's deep fake detection technology, but it's really just a sanity check of, all right, you want your password reset. Maybe if you have a zero trust architecture, you could do a password reset, but now you're stuck only on your laptop until you do something else, right? And you're not immediately allowed to touch the payroll system as soon as you get a password reset. So there's some kind of what we call tar pitting, right? Things that we can slow people down. I would say multiple accounts for privileged things, or like rerouting money, have two-person integrity for rerouting money. Those types of things are just simple processes. And I think if we just slow down and go to a whiteboard, there's some common sense solutions to most problems.
My kind of final question for you, not kind of, it is my final question for you. In terms, people here, everyone's talking about, excited about AI, innovation, providing services to their customers that work as quickly as possible. Do you think that cybersecurity and innovation are at odds, or is there a way that you can meet both and make sure that your consumers and your business is protected?
You could absolutely do both. I'm a big believer in human in the loop. I think there's value and quality in having humans in the loop. I think during the opening remarks we talked about getting the call center in AI is in the loop, and you're just like human, right? You just yell operator until a human picks up. I do think there's a quality in human in the loop in the first place, but I do think we need to figure out how do we move faster from a security perspective, because the bad guys are definitely using it to move faster. How do we inform our stakeholders and our users of what does that look like? I always give the example of user awareness training. We all go through the phishing exercises and user awareness training. We bring in companies, or you have a team in-house that comes up with these phishing exercises, but like your security operations center gets phishing reported to it all the time. So why are we making up examples and not just showing the company, here's the thing that popped us, or here's the thing that bothered us last week? Maybe no one got infected, but show them the real examples, right? Like my old CEO getting the old text message that he needs gift cards was a real example. So I just encourage folks to use common sense and think about absolutely how do we use AI or technology in general to speed up, but how do we keep humans in the loop so we can step back and go, oh no, that's not right. Like I think agentic AI is really cool. It's really just smart automation. But what happens, the new thing is the AI browsers, and you can just be like, I got to go to New York tomorrow, and it books all your travel and all that. What happens when that gets hijacked and it books the travel to Ireland and it's 10 grand? Am I, as a user and an employee, at fault for that? Because I know corporate travel policies are one of the scariest things in most companies, right? But now I've used the technology you gave me that probably came out a week ago from this wonderful city and hasn't been tested yet, and now it's cost me 10 grand and bought me first class. Like, so there's that what we call non-repudiation. Like, can you say Andy did that, or his bot did it? Who's at fault? But then also, how are you hardening those bots? Because me as a hacker, if I get in your network, I'm going to use your agent. And we talk about living off the land, I'm going to use your AI to live off the land. And I'm going to, if it has access to all that sensitive data, thanks. Thanks for completely blowing through zero trust and giving me an admin agent that does all those things for me much faster than I can.
You have been warned. Thank you, Andy. That was great.
Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. We are back with a little bit more data and survey results and context. So I didn't get to introduce myself. No one did, but I'm part of Bloomberg Intelligence. We are the in-house investment research team within Bloomberg. We are a team of 500 analysts, associates, and editors across all the regions in the world, including mainland China, including Brazil now. I just wanted to share something with you which is hot off the press. So this came out right this morning. We conducted a survey of 600 plus respondents across different industries to assess what was the real impact of AI in their industries. And there's a lot of hype around the AI bubble, around what AI can do. The biggest fear is, will there be a lot of job losses? Which industries are more vulnerable, blah, blah, blah. We wanted to really quantify that. And that's what my department does. We do data-based investment research. 150 participants out of these were from financial services, and that spans across insurance, asset and wealth management, commercial banking, investment banking, fintech, and payments. Most of this cohort, about 80% plus, was C-suites, with the remainder serving as senior directors or above across these organizations. So this really is the real picture of what companies are thinking about AI adoption and where they are. To give you a sense of the size of the companies that we connected with, 50% plus were firms with 5,000 to 10,000 employees, 30% of them were 10,000 to 50,000 employees, and 16% companies were over 50,000 employee base. And geographically, 40% were North America, 50% were Europe. So about 70% of financial institutions saw 1 to 10% revenue growth, while roughly 74% project a similar rise in profits. And if you think about it, this basically suggests very minimal operating leverage if you have the same amount of translation of growth in revenue and profit. And what that means is that AI basically stands to benefit companies on client engagement, on personalization, on cross-selling revenue. Yet, because they're constantly investing in AI, in data technology, in infrastructure, in personnel, the impact on cost is going to be a bit more delayed. And that's what the survey results are kind of pointing to. So we do expect cost ratios to start rationalizing a little bit more as productivity gains materialize after that investment period is over, or at least the investments taper off. And that supports stronger incremental margin benefits beyond 2027-28 across the industry. More than 75% of our respondents expected productivity to rise at least 6%. Yet over 70% also see higher operating costs because of AI deployment. And that's, as I mentioned, because of all the investments in data, cloud migration, AI-related tools, and model governance. The findings reinforce that AI's early phase in financial services is more likely to be about building capability rather than cost reduction. This is a very important chart for a lot of people, and this is something that a lot of people worry. Contrary to popular belief, 2/3 of financial services executives expect headcount to rise over the next 3 years due to AI. More than half of them are planning to add roles as AI compliance specialists, workflow and agent designers, model auditors. So there are new roles that they anticipate creating because of all these investments in AI. And that basically signals a workflow realignment rather than a headcount reduction focus, and rather than basically displacing more people tied to this technology, right? Most foresee a 6 to 10% increase in net headcount. That is the other surprising takeaway from this survey. And that's likely concentrated in the areas around data science, engineering, research, and advisory roles. One thing to note, financial services in particular, the AI adoption curve is a lot more gradual than some of the other industries that you probably encounter, be it retail, consumer, tech. Only 23% of respondents actually report enterprise-wide scaling of AI tools compared to 35% across all industries. And the gap likely stems from overlapping regulatory, data, and risk constraints. There's tighter model governance, explainability requirements by regulators, fragmented legacy data is a big challenge across the industry, and strict oversight of PII. Anyone who works in financial services here appreciates that challenge. All of these issues limit model training, and the strategies add cost and complexity to model development, whereas risk and compliance caution also slows out your ability to roll out models in real time and go at the pace at which other industries in tech or retail probably go. Operational efficiency obviously is one of the biggest focus why people are investing in AI, and nearly half ranking it as the top objective for their AI investments. Process automation is central, but firms are emphasizing productivity gains, not headcount cuts, with only 15% of these respondents citing job cuts as their primary goal. So people are wanting to do more with less rather than cutting down people in their firms at the moment. At the moment is the main point. Revenue generation and customer experience are following closely. That reflects a broader shift towards using AI to deepen more personalization across your product spectrum, accelerate product innovation, unlock new and digital revenue streams. If you talk to any banks, that's one of the key focus that they have. Here's the interesting part, and I think the audience here will relate the most with this. 40% of financial services allocate 11 to 20% of their annual tech budgets to AI-related initiatives. Payment companies across the financial spectrum lead that. An average of 17% of total spending is dedicated to AI capabilities. Investment banking and wealth management follow closely. Obviously, leaders like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, they're all making very heavy AI investments. And here's one of the most interesting pieces as well, right? In our view, AI could actually graduate from a cost focus to a margin and monetization lever. And we think that fintechs addressing SMBs are disproportionately positioned to benefit from AI. Why is that? Because all financial subsectors, they're actively pursuing AI adoption, but AI is one of the first technologies that can actually process unstructured workflows and information, and that has been one of the biggest challenges, and I'll talk more about it as we go forward. We expect winning fintechs to adapt AI as a lever to lower cost ratios, faster acquisition. However, companies with lower or thinner data moats, I think those are the companies that are going to struggle in the AI era. I'll delve a bit deeper on why the fintechs we think are better positioned, but just to kind of place the industry context, SMBs are the backbone of the global economy, right? They account for more than half of the global GDP. Over 90% of all companies are SMBs, and more than 2/3 of business employment is through SMBs. Every bank, what their salt will tell you what a lucrative segment this is, how much they want to target it, and yet this is one of the biggest and most challenging segment that banks have struggled to service globally. Manual AR and AP processes dominate financial operations. There's just too much manual intervention, too much inefficiency that kind of is ridden. And that is what makes SMBs challenging. But from the client perspective, quality and cost of labor, as what Mary Kay had pointed out during our panel, it's one of the most challenging parts of SMBs. And collectively, these pain points add to operating cost. They elongate working capital cycles for these companies, and they just keep it's like a chicken and egg problem that kind of keeps self-reinforcing. AI is the first technology that is capable of interpreting unstructured workflows like invoices, like emails, contracts, and that enables automation across AR/AP. Even if the payment itself is digitized, there's just so much manual intervention on both ends of the transaction that it just doesn't make the puzzle piece seamless and flow. Payments and fintechs are shifting from basic digitization to full straight-through automation flows. Mastercard assesses $80 trillion commercial flows as an opportunity, of which $63 trillion is in invoiced payments. When we tie that into the findings of our survey, the fastest areas where it's reaping benefits is around software development and engineering. 66% of companies have talked about scaled or deployed use cases rather than just doing pilots at the moment. Specific to SMB fintechs, AI adoption across these fintechs are centered around 4 high-impact workflows. First is APR automation, which we talked about in the panel today. Second is better risk scoring and underwriting. Access to capital is one of the biggest challenges, and AI can help you resolve that. Third is efficient onboarding and customer support. And all of them are aimed at supporting back-office workflows to lift margin and to expand attach rates for fintechs. Picking through some of them individually. So we're picking out some case studies to show what companies are doing in that regard. So with Intuit, their AI bets deserve a mention. Our team thinks that its GenAI assistant, Intuit Assist, should provide a pricing tailwind and increased adoption of live experts that they work on their network. And with an end-to-end solution for small, medium businesses with QuickBooks AP automation, with their HR integration, all of that data comes into one place, and you generate predictive insights out of that. That's a very, very valuable asset for SMBs, frees up a lot of time to do more productive things, and also makes it very sticky for Intuit. In this era, where fintechs this is one space where I think fintechs will actually gain an edge. AI leaders are going to see lesser loss rates and volatility, and higher attach rates for working capital. So if you monitor those statistics, you'll see how fintechs keep gaining an edge over banks because banks don't have their data sorted at the moment, at least not the primary banking relationships that you would think that would be targeting that segment. Risk underwriting is going to be continuous and adaptive, and all of the conversations that we had around different data sets getting incorporated in that decision, how much is your AP, how much is your AR, your POS data, accounting feeds, tax information, all of that will become currency to get better credit access and availability for SMBs. Platforms that integrate AI into merchant-facing workflows, they can widen their competitive moats. All of you, this is something to kind of think about. Onboarding and support are one of the areas where we are seeing very early scaled AI benefits. PayPal reported 1.5 times higher average margin per merchant and 2 times more product activations when they start onboarding their merchants with a survey and get to hear what the merchants are looking for and get to know them better at the start. Mastercard leverages AI across several use cases, including decision intelligence, etc. But I think the most notable that I have noticed is on the doubling down on digital identity and trust, where it has made sizable acquisitions, and I talked about Recorded Future. They block billions of dollars of fraud annually through AI-driven solutions, and they've boosted fraud detection rates by 20% to as much as 300%. And lastly, Block. It is positioning Square as an AI-native operating system for small businesses, embedding intelligence directly into merchant workflows. They've launched a LLM-driven tool that automates customer messaging, marketing, etc. The one thing that I really liked was their voice-enabled system, which basically, when I place an order on phone, that message does not get received by a person. It goes directly to their order platform, and the accuracy of that model is so much more better than what we've ever seen in the past, all thanks to AI. To end with, what does it take to win this race? Our survey confirms that doing the hard things will matter the most. Data remains the foundation and primary sticking point for AI adoption across all spectrums of financial services. More than a quarter of the participants identified data quality as one of their most pressing challenge, reflecting the industry's reliance on accurate, well-governed data sets for model reliability and also regulatory confidence. Another 30% ranked data privacy and cybersecurity as their top concerns. So that's what we think data readiness and data strength will determine winners, and it's not about who has the best AI model, but who has their data sorted and organized. With that, I'm on time. Thank you so much. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or you want to access more of this research. We're available on the terminal. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. I am going to jump straight into the panel since we only have a little over half an hour and a lot of excellent panelists. So I will start off with asking a question for everyone who has thoughts, which is, as an AI reporter, we're hearing every day concerns about, are we in an AI bubble? Are enterprises actually getting value out of all of these advancements in LLMs and generative AI technology? So I want to toss that to you all. What do you think about the concerns about the AI bubble? Is there too much hype around AI capabilities versus the realities of using it in an enterprise workflow like in fintech? So whoever is eager to start, just go ahead.
I guess I'll start. So I'm the global head of payments for AWS, and in my role, I get to work with customers all over the world, financial services customers who use not only traditional AI and machine learning, which I'm sure everyone here knows, the financial services industry has been using that for many, many years. What is new over the last, call it 2-3 years, is generative AI. And we have financial services customers right from payment companies to larger financial institutions using generative AI for bunch of use cases, but mostly in 3 different areas. One is productivity, improving productivity for engineers, workflow automation, things like that. Second is risk management, so real-time decisioning in terms of, from a payment standpoint, how do you make decisions and offer those decisions in a way where they are scalable and hyper-personalized. And the third is new value creation. And we are seeing a lot of our customers use generative AI for building experiences. The folks on the panel earlier talked about how small businesses are very unique in terms of the business they are in. And generative AI technologies are able to, customers are able to build use generative AI to build those experiences at scale. And that's what is exciting from what we see.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think just mentioned small business. I think one of the interesting things is in every new technology, the near term is overstated and the long term is understated from an impact perspective. And from a small business, running small business, these sellers don't have time to do many different things. So they reach for tools. And if you can give them insights or give them agents to do work on their behalf, then that's kind of game changing for them as a business. And then I think that helps, broader society as well.
Yeah, I mean, AI is here to stay. So whether there's a bubble or not, it's kind of not the point. It's when you think about, like you said, from small, but as you really think about scale, like that's where AI can truly change how companies get from where they are today to where they want to be in a really effective way.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm the vendor at this panel, so I'll give you a little bit of perspective from a product build. It's definitely been a year of a lot of experimentation for customers, trying a lot of different technologies. At Salesforce, the Agentforce platform, and we just recently announced our results. We're over $500 million in ARR, 18,000 customers, about 70% growth in the last quarter for people moving from pilot to production. So you're definitely starting to see that. Autonomous actions now growing at about 100% quarter over quarter. And this is really the first time, I think, in the past year and a half where we've gotten to the point where we can talk about that kind of usage, where customers aren't just doing, focused and small POCs, but starting to move into use cases in production. But those use cases are early. Most people, I think, that are doing generative workflows, that are building autonomous agents, are starting out with fairly straightforward, simple things that they can make sure that the agents are behaving consistently, they're behaving accurately, and then slowly kind of moving up the curve to more complex workflows. And certainly in financial services, you have really important considerations from a trust, security, compliance perspective that you need and require the technology to not be hallucinatory. It has to be controlled. That's really important. And then you also have to make sure that you are able to connect all of this incredibly rich data in order to actually be able to provide those experiences at scale. So there's some unique challenges, I would say, in the regulated industries that we do see. But this has been, I think, this has been a year where we're starting to see that momentum and growth, and we expect next year people are going to really start to push the needle on. Let's make some decisions. Let's make sure we're actually creating some value.
And Madhav, as a CEO of Agentforce, are there certain AI vendors that you find for the customers that you're working with are particularly helpful for certain use cases over others? And of course, I know Salesforce also builds their own technology on top of those, but you're working with a whole host of partners, right? So what are you finding for these Agentforce kind of use cases people are liking the most?
Yeah, I think the name of the game in this technology is every customer is going to have an ecosystem of capabilities that they're going to use. So for Salesforce, we're providing agentic and AI capabilities in the customer domain, in sales, in service, in marketing, in commerce, for employees that are using our capabilities, obviously for companies that also use Salesforce to interact with their customers. So that tends to be where we tend to focus. But at every single layer of the stack, there's really critical connectivity. I mean, when we think about employee experiences, Workday is a very close partner where we make sure that the agentic and AI capabilities that they have on their platform work seamlessly with ours, because many times when you're dealing with employee scenarios, you're going to cross over from things that are in the Salesforce domain to things that are really in the employee and the workforce domain. So that connectivity is important. The same thing is important at the data layer. We work with Amazon Many of our customers obviously use Amazon at their infrastructure layer, and we have to make sure that these things are interoperable and connectable. Amazon also builds, agentic models and their Bedrock technology. So does Google. So does Microsoft. So to be effective, I think in this in the agent space, how do you make sure that customers have flexibility across these vendors, depending on what the application is, depending on what the use case is, and where they're interacting with us? I think that is really the path to success here. That customers will require those things to work together interoperably in order to drive value.
Okay, great. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about Workday. And, I think many of us probably in this room have used Workday software. How is AI actually changing, especially these newer generative AI products, right? And how is that actually changing the operations with employee services as well as the financial, operations of your org at the company?
Yeah. So one, I completely agree in terms of interoperability is so core to how we're thinking about Workday is thinking about agentic, because we know that all customers need truly, or all agents really need a lot of context to be able to ensure that they are that we are allowing the agents to have the right data to make the right decisions, and then to bring it up to the people that actually make so that you have the human in the loop decision making for any sort of people and or money related process. At the end of the day, the CFO or the SVP of FP&A is responsible for ensuring that financials are accurate. And so human in the loop is important, but you also need to ensure that you are driving a much more effective and efficient process. So when we're looking from a Workday perspective, whether it's a HR related process or a finance related process, it's really all about how do we ensure that we are continuing to drive a real transformational process, but also doing it in a way that ensures that you have the right accountability at the right point in the process. That's something that I know our developers and our head of R&D is very, very, very focused on.
I'm curious in your own role, because we hear a lot about how one of the major use cases that generative AI is trying to apply itself to in the workforce is in finance. Coding kind of being the first one, right, where you really saw mass adoption, finance being the next. So I'm curious, as someone heading up finance, how much day-to-day would you say you're using generative AI tools, and for what specific tasks?
So I feel like I'm lucky because I work at a company that develops a planning product or an FP&A product. So we are doing a huge amount of co-development with our product team on really looking at our financial planning process and really focused on what are the business outcomes that we need to ensure and drive, and not just looking at how do I make the process faster or even make it more automated, but really focusing on how do I completely unlearn what we've done over the past 20 years and just take a totally different lens on how this business outcome should get done. So I would say we're still in a little bit of a pilot phase. We've done some small pilots with the planning team on. They're developing a real co-pilot and a chat GPT type process for our planning, like headcount planning. So we're starting with pilots, but I really see within the next year, your FP&A team will have a very different way to plan and a much more fluid way to plan with their business partners, having real-time scenario planning verbally, just in a very different way. And so I'm really excited because I get to, work on this real time. But I do see us. It's still, it's early. We're seeing a lot of where I feel like we're kind of on this precipice of, like you said, the developers. It's very clear on how you become very more efficient. We're on the precipice of where it's really going to change how finance teams are able to really drive business value.
Nilesh, similar question to you as head of payments at AWS. how much has generative AI changed the kind of work that you're doing, the processes that you're working with?
Sure. So when we work with financial services companies, right, especially financial institutions or payment companies such as Square and others, there are a few areas where generative AI is extremely useful from a payments standpoint. So payments being a regulated industry, if you keep the productivity and developer productivity and those things aside for a second, one of the biggest things that is happening in the payments industry over the last, call it 5-6 years, is the rise of instant payments. So in the US, we have real-time payments offered by the clearinghouse. We have FedNow, which was rolled out like 2-3 years ago. And one of the main things, while we all as consumers love that our money can be sent or we can receive money instantly, one of the main things financial services companies and financial institutions have to worry about is fraud and risk management. So we are seeing regular AI as well as generative AI being used quite a bit from a standpoint of mitigating fraud and proactively identifying unusual patterns. Now, so that is really important, right? Where you have to reduce the losses and try to figure out how you can alert the customers if a financial services company or a payments company finds.
And can I just ask, how much has generative AI helped with fraud detection, do you think?
So it has, what has changed is the alerting mechanisms that are available for consumers or businesses. With generative AI, you can have personalized messages. So what used to happen in the past is you could detect unusual behavior, but the message that you used to get was pretty vanilla. What is happening now is, in context, financial services companies are able to show messages to the customers that, hey, we saw such and such patterns or such and such transactions, and have a really personalized experience that they can offer to the customer. And that's where generative AI is changing quite a bit. I'll just real quickly give an example about small businesses. So what has changed is, we talk about personalization quite a bit. Now, what does personalization in the context of small businesses mean? If you're a physician in the healthcare space, your AR/AP process is very different than, say, you're a general contractor or some other small business owner. Again, personalization has been done for a while in the past, but with generative AI, the ability to build those custom experiences has become very easy. Cost of building custom experiences has gone down quite a bit, and that is what has changed with generative AI.
Willem, similar question for you. How has generative AI changed the business that you're doing at Square?
Yeah, I'm going to unpack it in a couple dimensions. First, I'll just kind of follow up on the kind of risk compliance side. I think one of the interesting things is we see kind of lots of chargebacks, disputes, and things like that, right? It's a very textual, very manual process. So having generative AI and agents help both kind of the people managing those and also the workflows between the sellers and kind of the banks helps a great deal. It makes it more personal and kind of a better experience. From a Square perspective, we kind of really see, so small businesses, the one thing they're short on is on time. Like, they just don't have time, right? They're busy, they're running businesses. So any capability that you can give sellers to help understand their business better, to make better decisions, that's where we kind of started with a lot of our AI products, just trying to help decision making and help bring kind of better intelligence to their businesses, will help them succeed. And I think the second thing is you have to look at where they spend the most time in a week, or the things that they can't hire for right now, right? Staffing is incredibly tight across America, especially with small businesses. And I think if you look at that, there's things like our AI voice ordering product, which, post-COVID, many restaurants just didn't reopen phone lines. Like, you couldn't call and place an order, which was just difficult to restaff. So we kind of identify these different areas in building kind of purpose-built products that one can help kind of sellers feel like they have an additional employee. So that's where we've been focused, and we're seeing a lot of great success.
Great. I'm going to ask an audience question, which is, what is the biggest hidden cost companies underestimate when scaling AI? If anyone has thoughts.
I got like two interesting ones. I think one is you can't force customers to use AI, right? So like, you have to make that experience trustworthy. And if you don't get that many chances, right, to, like, if you give the wrong answer, or if you're asking about sales reports and you say X and the actual answer is Y. So I think that's one. It's just like a hidden cost of just trying to scale this. You have to have like enough care to build these experiences that actually work. I think the second There's a lot of talk around just the cost of running models and things, but the industry hasn't seen a technology that's improved from a cost perspective by an order of magnitude every year, like in a long time, right? So it's like truly like focusing on cost optimizing per token costs right now, unless you're like, you know, OpenAI or Google or whatever, right? Probably isn't the right focus. You should focus on the best experience that you can provide your customers. And then, you know, the trends are pretty clear from a cost to serve.
The only other thing I would say on that is like there's a cost like from the customer end, but then there's also if you're scaling it for a business from, you know, as you're maybe a small or medium business and as you're scaling, depending on what size you are, the change management of your employee base is often a hidden cost that some people ignore. And again, depending on the size of your company, that is a real focus. I know from a Workday perspective, we're very focused on change management.
Yeah, we've had, you know, thousands of customers that have been doing this. There's really some patterns that have emerged over the last year, and I put them in 3 buckets. There's a big cost to trust. That's the first one, and it's always the first question. Certainly in this industry, it's really critical. How do you make sure that the experience is trustworthy? Where's the data coming from? How are you controlling it? So I think trust is kind of the first question. The second question that I think can come with a lot of hidden cost is the agent design itself. How are you optimizing your architecture? How are you making sure you are controlling the behavior of the agent for it to be consistent? And so there's a lot of design time decisions. Willem talked about the actual experience that you're building for a customer has to be rich and evocative in a way that they're going to use it, right? And if you throw out these experiences with a lot of investment and it's not compelling enough, it's going to get buried in some app or some website and no one's really going to get value. So design time, I think, is a big one. And then the third one, which is customers have gone up the maturity curve, are starting to become really important, is I need to measure the cost. Like, how do I actually observe the behavior of the agent? How do I analyze where it's working, where it's not working? I need to make improvements to that agent. Most customers, obviously, where we are, have spent a lot more time thinking about kind of just getting it designed and getting it out there. But now you see as customers start to use this more, that scalability, that observability, that continuous improvement starts to become really critical so they can manage those ongoing costs even as infrastructure costs come down.
Makes sense. I'm curious about hiring. Has AI impacted the types of roles that you're hiring for? There are new roles being created because of AI. Has it? You know, there's been some reports about, are we seeing a slowdown maybe in some entry-level roles because of this? And what is the path for entry-level workers if that is the case? But curious as to your thoughts on that, if anyone has.
Well, I can give you an example of one of our customers. It's a fairly large, global customer, and they came to us, I guess, about 7-8 months ago. They had like roughly 5,000 call center agents, and they're like, "Hey, we are really excited about generative AI and what it can do for our customers, and we are thinking of changing the role for 10% of our call center agents to be prompt engineers. Can you train these guys to be not call center agents but prompt engineers?" And that's how they started.
Interesting.
And that created a whole cultural change within their call center organization at a global level, which is now there are these prompt engineers who are fine-tuning all the information that is happening and the experiences that they're offering to their customers. So that's what we are seeing, which is different people are doing different things, provided it happens at a cultural level, and then that's how it trickles down to other parts of the organization.
That's a great example. Does anyone else have others of?
Yeah, I think the redeployment is a really good example where people are taking skill sets and saying, hey, we don't need as many people now doing reactive work for customers. We can put them in higher order things. Customer service is a good example. Sales is another example. I want to go back to what Willem said, though, which I think is really, in some ways, where this technology is going to add the most value. We gave this example at Salesforce. Over the 26 years that Salesforce has existed, we've had literally millions and millions of people that have reached out to us that we have just not had the ability to reach back out to, that have been interested in our products. You just imagine the amount of demand that almost every company typically will not have sufficient people in marketing or sales to be able to fulfill. Agents doing the work that the humans are not doing, I think, is actually kind of an underreported value that we're going to get from these. It's not a zero-sum game, right? We're going to be able to now create productivity and create value in ways that extend the workforce. And typically, the extension of the workforce is going to mean that we get to do more things. We get to talk to more customers. We get to engage with more customers. We get to provide that service more. And I think customers are starting to see that. And customer service is a really good example where I think at the beginning of this journey, everyone was like, oh, 80% of the customer service organization is going to go away and things like that. But really, we have like really valuable people that could be doing great work for us that are going to expand the remit of what customers are doing. And I think that's you're starting to see some evidence of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think the redeployment area is such a focus for Workday internally, but also clearly for our product, because we truly believe that our product can help our customers be able to better understand their workforce and what skills they actually have, what roles they've been doing over the past number of years at the respective company. And it is able, within our product, we have multiple different areas where we do surface up, these are the skills you have of your employee base, and this is where they could be, essentially their skills could be much more useful as you continue to be able to drive effectiveness and efficiency in your organization. So I know as a leader of FP&A, I definitely am looking to continue to think differently about the skill sets I'm hiring for, because no longer do I need someone who maybe has a CPA necessarily, because what I really need is someone who is extremely curious and really wants to understand the business.
That's interesting. We were talking about agents. I'm curious, what do you think is missing today for these agents to really be fully, integrated and more autonomous? I've been interested in reporting on agents for 2 years, which feels like eternity in AI time. I remember thinking 2024 is going to be the year of agents, and not that it wasn't per se, but I don't think we're at a place yet where we're really seeing, humans not be in the loop, let's say, for critical tasks. How far away do you think we are from really more of this sort of agent autonomous workflow? And what's stopping us from doing that today?
Yeah, I think the interesting part is, so the models are changing, especially with the new reasoning models, and like there's a benchmark called just like long horizon thinking, like how long one of these agents can actually do things, like a trajectory. Man, that's like 4 or 5 hours and 6 hours, and next year it's going to be a day and things like that. So I think like one of the challenges we've had as an industry is that these agents are pretty good for some basic things, and then you add more data or more tools or whatever to it, and then it starts to degrade performance over time. That's just going to get better, right? So what's going to look like, I don't think there's any kind of immediate one day to the next where everything's going to be better. It's going to be this slow grind of just like constant improvement. And I think what's going to happen is that more and more tasks are just starting to get folded into these agents, right? It'll build trust with the users. They'll trust them to do more and more complicated things. And I think it's our jobs as people building these tools to kind of create those experiences for sellers. So it's hard to like predict a time frame. It's just going to be this compounding effect, and one day, probably in the next year or so, we'll just be like, oh wow, it can actually do all this stuff, right? And I think that's going to be pretty interesting. When it happens.
I think it's important to not equate the LLM technology and the agent technology as the same thing. The LLMs have unlocked this ability, obviously, to communicate with technology in natural language, and that's a profound unlock, right? We now can deploy software, we can create experiences that are very rich. So that's incredible. But in order to actually create an agent, there are critical surrounding capabilities around the LLMs that don't go away. A good example is an LLM is never going to have all of the data and the context and the content that is necessary for an enterprise to work effectively. A model is not going to be trained entirely on that. So you have to be able to supply that context. That will always be the case. The second thing that an LLM will not naturally be able to do is execute on deterministic workflow and process that is specific to the way you run your company. Right now, an LLM will get better at reasoning through a process. It will take less time. It will be more efficient in how it reasons through a process and the way we do this. But we really believe that we require the kind of creativity of the LLMs paired with all of the deterministic process and workflow that we built. Those things have to work hand in hand. That's also a really critical capability if you want to be able to do that effectively. And the experience layer we think of these LLMs kind of interchangeably with an application like a ChatGPT or something like that. But the experience layer is actually significantly more complicated than that. We're going to be doing things on voice and video and chat and all of these different channels, internal to our employees, external. And so that experience layer also is something that I think businesses are always going to have to build. And so I think the agent technology requires, I think, robust pieces, independent of which function you're applying for, that I think have to supplement and augment the LLMs. The infrastructure layer alone is not going to get us to fully autonomous behavior, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. Let me give you an example of how one of our customers is using agents. So in the payments world, payment networks and come up with different rules every month, sometimes every other month, and generally they are financial services companies or banks have to comply with those rules. So in the past, what used to happen is these rules were generally published on some website or in some documents like PDF files, and then there used to be updates to those documents, right? So V1 is rolled out in January, V2 is rolled out in February, that kind of stuff. And there was a manual process where people used to download those documents, look at what are the rules we need to comply for, and then generally there's a timeline which is you have to comply with all these rules in 6 months or 9 months or whatever the case might be. So some of our customers, what they're doing is they've built agents to download these files, which is the easy part, but look at the rules in context, which is V1 of that document says this, V2 of that document says this, and then finally look at that entire set of documents and come up with these are the final 4 rules that I need to comply with, and then feed that into the developer pipeline to make the appropriate changes. So those types of things are becoming a lot more efficient with agents and the technologies that are available today.
Makes sense. I'm curious to ask about your opinions on a study. There was this MIT study, maybe, I don't know, several months ago, earlier this year, saying, I'm sure you've all seen it, that 95% of businesses don't find value in their pilots with generative AI applications in their first year. And it was very controversial. I know a lot of people push back on it. But I'm curious, what should we make? There have been other studies, too. I think there's one at Stanford saying that a lot of enterprises are finding some of the output can be, quote-unquote, slop, or if it's, messy text, they have to go and rewrite it, and that can increase that inefficiency. Same thing with bugs in code. But I'm just curious, anecdotally, what you all are seeing. I imagine you may have, a different perspective, but what do you make of some of those early reports that were kind of casting doubt on how much enterprises are finding value with Gen AI?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. So, at Block, we have an open source tool called Goose, right, that we just donated to the AI Agent Foundation. About 2/3 of employees use it every week, right? So, but I think if you would ask one of those employees, like, how much does a generative AI tool change your day-to-day, you probably wouldn't get a resounding, oh my gosh, it's like game-changing yet, right? So I think it's like hard to tell exactly how much of a day's kind of toil or whatever things that they're doing or not doing, like, checking out PDFs. Maybe if you ask that employee, they'd be like, oh yeah, maybe it's like helping this really small part. But if you compound those small things over like all the days of the week and all the employees at your company, I think it's like a lot more than we all imagine. And I think that's the hard thing to like quantify, right? So I think it's kind of a little bit more that, yes, there is going to be a big impact, but it's like not totally diffused everywhere yet, and it's kind of like accumulating over time. So I think like that's why it's hard for me to believe these studies, because my lived experience is like, well, this is actually really useful for me. But when I say all my workflows are converted to AI, no, like it's like very specific things.
It also depends on your starting point for the pilot, right? Which is if you start with technology and try to look for a use case, then pilots or proofs of concept generally don't result in meaningful outcomes. Yeah. But if you start with a customer problem and then try to figure out the right technology, and if the right technology is generative AI, then you can start seeing results immediately. So sometimes, we are all, we get excited with new technologies and we try to, shoehorn them into different things, and sometimes they don't work.
Yeah, I think
you start with the customer problem.
Totally. I think like in cases where enterprises are just like deploying this en masse versus trying and identifying kind of key problems that they're trying to solve, that's the difference between success and not.
I think that's a really key point. I mean, like I said, our top customers now are doing hundreds of millions of these agentic workflows. Those are effective implementations, right? They're not in the 95% that MIT quoted. But if you look at that I think there's three things that prevent good implementations today. Number one, if you do an agentic implementation for the sake of becoming agentic, it will fail. You need an outcome, you need a KPI, you need a very clear objective that allows you to scope what that focus is. So that's number one. Number two, if you don't understand what data and context that agent requires to be successful, and what you have is kind of a boil the ocean data strategy, it's not going to be successful. You need to be really focused and directive on what context does the agent need. And then the third one, which we kind of touched on, and I think it's the most important thing, is the LLMs are not a magic bullet. It is LLM technology paired with deterministic workflow execution that really understands and can execute that process. That's ultimately going to drive value. So where we've seen customers really be successful is that they've really been targeted in making sure that those things are satisfied in these agentic implementation, then those tend to get to scale. But if you don't have that, yes, you do tend to get stalled in that early phase.
Yeah. Julie, anything?
Yeah,
Last remarks?
the last thing I would say is that we are, especially with my team, I'm so focused on what is the outcome that we're trying to solve, and really try to stay away from, I'm just trying to get done with like how I've done it for 5 years faster. Right. Because that is where I think things fail. Because we're not actually taking a step back and saying, no, I want to get to this outcome in a potentially very different way, and I'm open to how we do it differently.
Makes sense. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here and your time. Appreciate it. That concludes. Thank you. Yes, a round of applause for our participants, please. If you'd like more information for them, please visit the resources tab in our event website. To watch any part of this event, you can return to BloombergLive.com or visit our YouTube channel at Bloomberg Live. And for those of you who are here with us, please join us for cocktails and networking. And for everyone else, good night.